Okay, so with Christmas coming up, it can be quite difficult, especially for our autistic children, and especially our children with Down syndrome and being autistic as well. It can be quite difficult. So I suppose I just wanted to cover what it means, like the areas of differences that we see in autism. So I'm just going to look a little bit at communication, routine behaviours, and stimming, strong interests and hobbies, and we'll cover sensory differences, anxieties, and stress responses. And I don't like when I put my slides like that, but I was doing it in a different area today. So I suppose when we look at communication looks completely different, especially for our children with Down syndrome and autism. So they can be very, very direct or literal. Their body language can be very, very different. Their behaviors. So every single behavior is a form of communication or seeking out a connection. And I do a lot of talks around behaviors and stuff like that. And then sharing interests is another way of communicating. But what I often find with children is they need a lot of time to process what you've said. So we'll have our expressive communication, our language, our body language and behaviors. But with our receptive communication and following directions and the understanding of language and processing language. So when we intake a direction and then we have to process it and output a response, we find with neurodivergent people, they tend to take in about 43% more information, be it sensory, be it a social situation or anything like that. And it can take them a little bit more time to process. So I have a lovely 10-second rule that I would use with kids all the time. Is when we ask them to do something. So it's time to do your homework. You might give them 10 seconds. So it's just that slowing down and allowing them to respond. I have a 19-year-old and I still use that. Like it's time for dinner and I still have to give them 10 seconds to respond. So it's just a really good tool to use, especially when a child is dysregulated, which I'll speak a lot about now in a little while. So just slowing yourselves down. I suppose with routine behaviors, like routines are so important, especially for autistic people, because it's a very scary world. It's very unpredictable. It can be very, very confusing. And this is why we love to do everything in a routine. We need to know absolutely everything about it. There's a great researcher called Dr. Vermeulen, Dr. Peter Vermeulen, and he did a lot about the autistic brain and predictability in the autistic brain and how predictability helps relieve anxieties and stress and stuff. So that's why our routines are really, really important to us. I suppose stimming, on the other hand, for anybody who doesn't know stimming can look in many, many different forms. So stimming is a self-regulatory behavior. So it could be anything from flapping your hands, spinning your hair, spinning in circles, jumping up and down. You can have vocal stims where they'll keep repeating things over and over again. So it can be from different things. So it can be from stress. You might see people like picking their hair out, or skin pickers and stuff like that, or when they're overwhelmed. But it's from when they're enjoying themselves as well, because we tend to feel things an awful lot more. So when we're really stressed, we're really, really stressed. And then when we're overwhelmed, we're really overwhelmed. And then when we're enjoying ourselves, we're really, really enjoying ourselves. With stimming, I'd always encourage a child to stim, unless it's a self-injurious behavior. So if it's the likes of pulling your hair out, or biting your hand maybe, or picking your skin, but we're not going to stop it. We need to kind of intervene and give them something else to do instead, so they're not hurting themselves. Or it could be from banging their head. I see a lot of head bangers that need to bang their head in order to regulate, but we need to get them to do it in a safe way. So if you always look at the stim, is what I say, if you look at the stim, if it's biting on their hand, it could be one of two things. It could be that they like the pain in their hand, or it could be that they need to actually bite something. So if you bite that part of your hand, it actually feels like biting a stress ball. So you might be able to give them a stress ball to bite so they're not hurting themselves. Or it's just giving their hands a good squeeze to give them that deep pressure. If it is skin picking and stuff like that, you can get loads of lovely things like picky pads that you can use for them to kind of redirect them to that. Or you can get actually hair puller things that when they're to have the feeling of pulling out their hair, so you could redirect them to that. And then for the likes of head banging and stuff, The harder mats, and I used to use the ones in IKEA, because I've worked in schools, like the IKEA mats that we would use in the book corners and stuff. They're a little bit harder. Maybe they could bang their head onto that, because sometimes the child just needs to kind of do that stim. Or giving them a good squeeze on their head is a really, really good way if they're head banging. Then we have our strong interests and our hobbies, which are really, really important. Um, and many develop them from a really, really young age. And they're really, really important to each individual. They can change over time, but they get great pleasure out of these. And this is when you look at Christmas presents and things like that, go for what their interests are. So what can we get around their interests? We also use it as a way of communicating, which we call info dumping. So this is when a child needs to tell you absolutely everything. So my son's was Greek mythology growing up, so he would come in and info dump about Greek mythology. You'd think I would know everything about Greek mythology now, but I don't. But what tends to happen, especially in school and stuff like that, if they're sitting in school and they're thinking of their special interests, so say it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they're sitting thinking about what Donatello's doing and what Michelangelo's going to do, and they need to talk about it. So it's a great tool for regulation, and you just need to get it out of them after a while. So a really nice way of doing it, because they'll be kind of like, I'll give you 10 minutes. I'm really going to listen to you, because they're going to realize that you're not listening to them sometimes. I've made that mistake myself. But they really need that tool to help regulate them throughout the day. I suppose when we look at stress responses, which would be previously known as meltdowns, we call them stress responses now. These are completely different to the likes of tantrums. So my easiest way of describing it is, if a child is having a tantrum for something that they want in particular, and they're kicking and screaming and all those things, and you give them that item that they want, if it was a car or a packet of sweets or whatever, and they're able to come back and they were able to stop crying. When it goes into a stress response or a meltdown, they're completely gone. It doesn't matter what you give to them. It doesn't matter if you were to give them what they wanted right there. But basically what it is an inability to take on any more demands. So the amygdala part of your brain, which is our emotional part of our brain, literally fires up and goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And then our self-control is completely gone. It's really an innate response to danger. So a child has absolutely no control over this during this time. I mean, this is where we can see a lot of behaviors and hitting and things like that. But it is so, so, so exhausting for the child, and it can produce huge feelings of shame and guilt and all those things, because it's not something that they want to do. It's literally complete loss of control. The best way to support a stress response, and it can be really, really difficult, especially when you're at home, is to try to use the low arousal approach. And that is you staying as calm as possible. Now, I know that is really, really, really difficult when you're a parent and you see your child is either hurting themselves, or they might be hurting you, or they're really, really upset, and all you want to do is make them okay. But it's to try keep it like the demands very minimal, or questions very minimal, because you just want to keep them safe. Some children need to just go into their room, and that's very hard for a parent to do. So my child would have done that for years, had to go into his room, where I would have to sit outside the door, but he just could not have me in his space. So some kids like, yeah, that's why I have to keep your distance, but not keep your distance. Some children need you there with them, but some children need their space, but they need to know that you're there. You're literally just waiting and ensuring that your child's okay. Every single child is completely different in their meltdown, and I'm sure you will know yourselves what to do, but we're not going to kind of speak about it. Don't speak about it afterwards. Don't speak about the behavior afterwards of kind of what they've done. So if they've kind of wrecked the room and stuff like that, it's not that. It's they've just had a really tough time. So you could say, I can see you're having a tough time. How can I help? And that's the most important part of it. Um, Any questions on that before I go in and start talking about the sensory system? Let me get my sensory stuff over here.
There's nothing in either the chat or the Q&A at the moment, Ciara, awesome. So you can fire ahead.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, when we look at the sensory system, and especially this time of the year, it's so This time of the year is so dysregulating. For anyone who has sensory processing differences, be it with the lights and the busyness and the excitement and Santa's coming and all these things and all the lights. I've noticed more and more lights going up every single day when you go out. So it can be very, very dysregulating. So I love the bottle of Coke analogy. It is not my analogy. I've been using it for years. I always found this is a lovely way to be able to get to verbalize it to a child, to your child, and for them to use it, right? So if you're thinking of a child like they're a bottle of Coke and they're going through today, so maybe they get up and you're kind of rushing out the door to try to get to school, and you want to shake that bottle of Coke. Maybe there are roadworks somewhere and you have to change directions that you don't normally go, you're going to shake that bottle of Coke. Maybe they get into school and their friend isn't in, you're going to shake that bottle of Coke, but you got to think about all their sensory demands. Maybe they sit down beside with someone with a smelly lunch, you're going to shake that bottle of Coke. Maybe they're out in the yard and somebody bumps into them, we're going to shake that bottle of Coke. If they try to do something that's really, really difficult, and you're going to shake that bottle of Coke. If you keep shaking that bottle of Coke, what happens is it explodes, and that is your stress response. But if you're shaking that bottle of Coke throughout the day, it's like you're fizzy inside. And that's what it really feels like when you're dysregulated. So I'm autistic ADHD. So I'd always describe it in a way that, you know, when you're having a really, really, really bad day and absolutely everything is going wrong. So I really struggle with shopping. And I just remembered one day a while ago when I came in and I struggle with the shops. I struggle with shopping. Everything was going wrong. I was running late and all those things. And I got into the kitchen and I dropped the eggs. And that was the end of the world for me. And I was like, I'm after breaking the eggs. It was absolutely nothing to do with those eggs. And I was sitting on the ground crying because of the eggs, but it actually wasn't anything to do with me breaking those eggs. It's a build up of things in order to kind of get to that point. And that's what our regulation is. So our self-regulation is adapting to different environments. So it's adapting to demands, which include attending to tasks, communication demands, social and emotional demands, and then sensory stimuli. And what we see often is children with sensory differences quite often have a very difficult time with self-regulation, especially younger children, especially because they don't know that these things bother them. So they might know that the bright lights are really bothering them. They might know that the sounds are really overwhelming to them. I thought I was deaf for an awful long time because I really struggle with auditory processing. But I wasn't diagnosed till I was later in life. So I really genuinely thought I was deaf for a long time, but I really struggle with it. So children who don't understand that these things are quite difficult for them, they're going to get really dysregulated, okay? This is our pyramid of learning, and it's all blurry because I've done this in Google Drive today as opposed to my PowerPoint. But what this is when we look at the pyramid of learning, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'll actually update that picture for you before I send it over to you because I do it in PowerPoint as opposed to Google Drive. But what it has at the bottom is your central nervous system, and then it has your sensory system. So the sensory system is the most important thing in order to do anything else. So if a child is dysregulated, it's very, very difficult to learn. If a child, what way I would describe is if you were sitting in a very, very busy restaurant that is really, really, really loud and you're wearing clothes made out of sandpaper, would you be able to sit and listen to me while I'm speaking? It just makes it really, really impossible. So regulation is absolutely key. I always push this regulation before education and all those things. And this time of the year gets so dysregulating. And that's why Gina asked me to come on around this time, because this is the time where we'll see as clinicians that burnout starts creeping in. So a lot of burnout, a lot of dysregulation, overwhelm, unable to go to school, all those things start creeping in from now. And then January is normally our toughest month. So to keep these things in mind before January comes around. And then we have 8 senses. So everybody knows the first 5. So we have our vision, our olfactory, which is our smell, our gustatory, which is our oral, tactile, which is our touch, and our auditory, which is our hearing. Okay, so there are 5, but we actually have 8 senses. So we have our vestibular, our proprioceptive, and our interoceptive, and I'll explain them as I go along. and kind of how you can support your child in that area. And then we hear an awful lot of sensory seeking and sensory avoidant or hypersensitive, or you might hear hypersensitive and hyposensitive. But what sensory seeking is a child needs that sensory input in order to help them regulate. So when they're sensory seeking, they need that sensory input. They need that sensory input regularly throughout the day. So you can always observe what your child is doing and what sense they're seeking from, because this is going to help calm their phase. Okay, so that's going to help calm their phase. When we have a child who's sensory avoidant or hypersensitive, overstimulation in particular senses can really shake their ball. Okay, so if they're getting shaky bottled, we call it fizzy in my house. So I can see you're getting fizzy. How can I help? Because that's a really nice way of verbalizing it. So we're going to try to be preventative around this, but it's not always possible. We don't live in a very sensory friendly world. It's just having that understanding. And you can be sensory seeking and sensory hypersensitive in the same sense, and it can change from day to day. Okay, just depending on regulation. So that's really important to understand. It's not always going to be the same every single day. So I suppose when we look at our vision, our hypersensitive kids are bright lights. So bright lights can really hurt. An awful lot of schools would have very, very bright lighting in them. And the likes of being in the bright lights, the likes of you going to any kind of lighting shows, now they love it, but can be really, really overwhelming. But they might love doing all the light shows and stuff around Christmas. The likes of busy shopping centres, they might love going to the shopping centre, but they get really, really overwhelmed by it because they get really overwhelmed with all the busyness. All the lights are happening now. And this is when a child will seek out dark areas. Okay. So when we look, and I'll kind of look at a little bit of movement breaks later on, but one of the breaks that I find really, really important, and it gets overlooked an awful lot of the time, is a sensory break. So we will hear lots about movement breaks and needing to move and all those things, and they are really, really so important. Don't get me wrong, but sensory breaks are really, really important as well. So a sensory break would be a break away from that kind of sense, or a break away from the bright lights. What we might see is a child who seeks out the dark areas, loves going and hiding in presses or going under the stairs. And they're like seek that out naturally. Or they might just really need a break in a darker room, in their bedroom. They might always have the lights off and the curtains closed. Especially after the likes of school and stuff like that, that break around that time is really, really important. Some kids love to just put blankets over their head, or sensory tents are really good if you don't have much space in your home. Like a sensory tent is really, really nice way of having it there. They're not that expensive, and you can just kind of leave it in the corner, and they can go in and they can set it up with cushions and all those things, and be able to get a break away, especially at this time of the year with all the lights and stuff going on. The other side of it is of our vision would be our seekers, who absolutely, like, they love watching sand fall, they love watching things fall, drop, or spinning wheels. They love anything that kind of moves. And these will be the sensory seekers, will be around the Christmas lights. They might be sitting stimming in front of the Christmas tree, watching the lights, all those things. Lovely toys around these would be like your bubble tubes and things like that. I don't think a bubble tube makes very long in a house, because they tend to get broken very, very easily. But you can make stuff like sensory bottles, where they can watch all the glitter and stuff fall. There's some lovely stuff on the likes of, like, I love Temu for all this stuff, because they do like lovely bubble tubes and sand timers and all those things that they can sit and watch. This is why a lot of our kids would love screens an awful lot of the time, because they're very visually they're giving loads of visual feedback for your child, and can actually be quite regulating for a child to have their tablet for a little while. Trying to think of around other Christmassy stuff for your vision. Anything that's kind of folly, there's I really highly recommend just putting into Timo kind of visual stimulations or visual sensory toys, which would be really, really good. Our olfactory, which is our smell, okay? So our hypersensitive kids, smells are going to make them feel sick. So making dinner is a huge one that comes up for me all the time. That's making me sick. That's disgusting. And they can't be around the kitchen. And it can be quite difficult when you're out, or if you're walking by restaurants. I have a restaurant below me, and every time I walk by, I think it smells gorgeous, but my son thinks it smells absolutely disgusting and it makes him feel sick. So it's just to be aware of around smells. It can make you feel sick, and it can be very dysregulating if they're really, really struggling with smells. There's lovely I got these lovely oils. They're actually from Soul Sal, which is an Irish company, and this is like a roller oil that we would use. So if they struggle with smells, they can put a little bit of oil onto their hand, and smell that, and you can put a bit onto things, and you can get loads of different smells like that. You can also get, and make it really easy, like if they're struggling with them in school especially, would be the likes of spice jar. I'll start pulling all my little bits out now. I have like all my sensory toys. So a spice jar, like if they really struggle with smells in school, because they can be quite expensive, the oils can be sometimes, but you could always just put a bit of cotton wool on them and put a few essential oils, and they can pull it. So if there's something smelly in school, that they can smell that, or if you're going out somewhere that they like to bring in, they might have loads of different little jars, and they like putting different oils in different ones if they really like the smells. So if a child really does struggle, just to understand that it can be quite dysregulating for them. So if it's shaking their bottle, we can kind of help them with that. On the other hand, we'll have our seekers who absolutely love smelling things. So they'll smell every little bit of food, they'll smell absolutely anything. Lovely ways of giving them. So terror putties are lovely. And this will work for tactile seekers as well. So some terror putties will have lovely smells. Now I have this one from actually Little Needers, and it's really, really good. It's full of essential oils and stuff like that, and it's quite safe. This actually lasts for ages, this one does. But I even have just in a little ball, and it smells really, really good. And this actually leaves your hands smelling absolutely gorgeous as well. So that's a really, really nice one, the likes of putties and stuff like that, to help with smells. All my sensory stuff now. Others, actually, that's a good one for the vision. I'm just thinking twice because I have my messy play here. For the likes of vision, the likes of moon sands are really, really good. Moon sands, and they're really good for tactile as well. So if I even just sit and watch in the fall, they're really, really nice presents around Christmas. You will not like the mess of them though, it's the only thing. But I love anything like that that's kind of messy. Gustatory, which is our taste or our oral, okay? So our avoiders or our hypersensitive kids might have food aversions. Food aversions are really, really difficult to work around, and to be working with a professional around food aversions is really, really important. They might struggle with different textures. They don't like mixing foods or foods touching off each other, absolutely fine. If they're like, they're just areas that if you're a hypersensitive. On the other hand, we have our seekers who love chewing, licking, tasting everything. Everything goes into the mouth, over stuff in their mouth when they're eating, which is a huge seeker. Well, there's loads of different things that you can do for oral stimulation. Just to be aware of it, if they're seeking it, we need to give it to them. So I always say, if you look at what they're chewing, licking, and tasting, is what we need to give them, okay? So the likes of, if we have sand eaters, it's normally the texture of the sand. So what I found worked for a few of my kids that I've worked with in the past is the likes of using raw spaghetti and getting them to chew on it, because it gives you that same texture between your teeth. If it's the likes of Play-Dohs and stuff like that, just to be very, very aware. If it's the likes of eating, and I always say, like, if it's something that tastes minerally, like the likes of muck or kind of licking metals and stuff like that, and they're not great eaters either, it might be worth getting kind of looking in, because it could be a mineral deficiency. So we often see if a child has a mineral deficiency, they can be seeking it out naturally, and that's why they're chewing. So I'd always, whatever they're chewing, licking, or I would always taste it. Okay. And so I'm trying to give some examples. The likes of Play-Dohs, if they like holding stuff in their mouth, they might like do you know the inside of a bread roll and kind of hold it in their mouth. If they like any hard things, so if like chewies are amazing, like chewies, if they like chewies, are really, really good. And you can get chewies in all different shapes, forms, and sizes. Okay, so I got 3 here. I've got one really hard man. This is a much softer man, and this is actually one that I would use because it's a movie. It's actually out of a game, and they stick together. But some kids like it when they move. Some kids just like the lanyard, and they just love chewing on the lanyard or a piece of string, and it's as simple as that. You can get material ones that can go around their neck, if they love chewing on material. You can get like, there's so many different things that you can get for the likes of oral stimulation. If they don't like chewies, and some kids don't like chewies, it's absolutely fine. The likes of regular crunchy foods, like the likes of apples or carrots, breadsticks, or rice cakes and stuff like that regularly throughout the day can give it, or popcorn. Ice pops can be a huge one if they're really struggling. If they're really seeking it. So like an ice pop is going to give you loads of oral feedback. It's going to give you all that feedback. If we have very big dribblers, so like if there's a lot of dribbling going on, a great way to give really, really quick feedback is, the sour sweet spray, which gives you that like loads of feedback. If they like it, that's absolutely no problem. So it's always kind of looking at what they're tasting and licking, and kind of trying to give it to them regularly. Did I just see a question there?
Yes, there is a question there, Ciara. My son is 11 years old. He chews his fingers. Try stopping him, but feel he needs it.
Yeah, but I'd be giving him loads of like oral feed, like, so that could be one of 2 things. Is it the pain on his fingers? It would be the one thing that he loves chewing on it because of the pain, and like not the pain, the kind of feedback that he would be getting in his fingers. A great way to do that could be like using the likes of a body brush or stuff like that. Like trying to give him that feedback, or squeezing his hands a good bit. Or is it the chewing part that he likes chewing on it? And then could we give him more oral feedback? Or it could be both. So it could be that he needs that input in his fingers. So maybe rubbing his fingers really regularly.
There's a similar question in chat, Ciara, as well, if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah. Hi, my son loves chewing on bibs. If I don't have them on him, he chews on the collars of his clothes or PJs. He lifts them up and pushes them right into his mouth, and bites on them. And that's it. So you can get lovely chew necklaces that are made out of material now for that. So then his clothes and the things don't get wet, because then what we could often see, if they want to start chewing on their clothes, then their clothes get wet, and then that bothers them, and they get overwhelmed by that.
Sorry, Ciara, could I just ask, could you repeat again what you were saying about somebody that has excess secretions, drools a lot?
Drools a lot. So did you know the sour sweet sprays, the really sour ones? They're like a little spray kind of thing, and that can give you loads of oral feedback and can help with the drooling a lot if they like it. That's the only thing.
Okay.
And ice pops are really good for it as well, because that gives you a lot of feedback. Okay, this is a huge one that we see. There's so many, the likes of pencil toppers. You can get like ones that are chewing around their wrists, there's loads of different kind of chew things that are available, and it's really all about finding what works for your child. So Team You again is your best friend, because everything is trial and error. What works for one child is not going to work for another child. So it's just keep trialing it to figure out what works for yours.
That's it, the questions in the chat now, Ciara. So we'll keep the rest of them now maybe till the end.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Then we have our tactile, which is our touch. Okay, so our avoiders or hypersensitive kids do not like, they might not like specific textures, might not like specific clothes. I'm sure you are all aware of this. They might have to cut out all the tags, but they might like really, really tight clothes all the time, and they need to have tight clothes on. Washing can be quite difficult around this. So if they're hypersensitive, sometimes the water falling on a child can be really, really overwhelming. It could be quite painful for them. Washing hair can be quite difficult. It's just really, really building up to it. With the likes of clothes and textures, I would always try to put them in what they're comfortable in as much as possible. If your child is ever struggling with shoes, my first go-to for shoes is Crocs. Okay, so Crocs are the most natural feeling ones, because the Crocs are they're a lot more open. There's a lot more breathing room and things like that. So we find that Crocs is really, really good one to go to. I know you've probably all got these, like you have to wear the same pair of runners. Like my son wears one pair of runners for a whole year, and until they are literally falling apart, he will not change them. Runners can be quite big thing. Textures, anything like that. They mightn't like putties or anything like that. So being aware of around Christmas time that they mightn't like specific toys that they don't want to play with, so I'd avoid them as much as possible. And then on the other side of it, we'll have our seekers. Okay, so our seekers are children who love that deep pressure, like weighted blankets and squeezes. Okay, a weighted blanket is a lovely Christmas present if you have a child. Just be very, very aware that your weighted blanket has to be under 15% of your child's, or 15% of your child's body weight. So keep that in mind. When we have a child who is seeking deep pressure all the time, what happens when we give deep pressure is, like, if anybody likes a squeezy hug, the noise that you make when you get a squeezy hug is because deep pressure actually calms our central nervous system. If we like deep pressure, some people do not like to be deep pressure at all. They don't like hugs. They don't like to be touched. But given that deep pressure during the day is really, really good. A great way of doing it is a peanut ball, like a peanut ball, and having them lying on the ground and rolling the peanut ball over them. If I can show you my peanut ball when we do the chat, when I can stand up and show you the peanut ball. When we're doing the Q&A later on. So you can like roll it over them. You can actually get like rollers for them to go through, which are a bit more extravagant, where there's like 2 rollers and they can kind of go through and it squeezes them. But weighted blankets are absolutely fantastic because it helps with that calm and can help with your sensory breaks and stuff like that. Body brushes are fab, and especially for a child who can be hypersensitive around clothing. Body brushes, the likes of ones out of pennies and stuff like that, actually give you loads of feedback. So what I find is, a child will always say it makes me feel itchy, because that's what it does. Like sometimes it makes you feel really, really itchy, and it makes you want to scratch your skin off if you're hypersensitive to specific textures and stuff like that. So using a body brush is really good to give that input throughout the day, and can be quite calming. And messy play, I'd be messy play mad now. So the likes of the moon sands or gloops or slimes, which break your heart in your house, slimes, anything like that would be kind of those seekers that absolutely love painting their hands. And like there's loads of different messy plays that you can get, but be aware that your house will be absolutely upside down, and they will go absolutely everywhere. So that's why I love using the food containers for them, because it can kind of keep them contained in little places. The other ones for kind of tactile are these lovely little swatches. I can't remember where I bought them, but it was a sensory one. So these are for any of our kids that really they love to have something to hold. So I have these lovely patches that I got. I'm sure you could get them on Amazon now. I probably have these about 8 years. They're really nice, and I have all different ones that have different feelings on them. that has like the Hulk and stuff on them, and they've got different dots, but they can be quite nice if your child loves to have something soft in their hand and kind of rub. And these actually rub, they're the two-piece material, so they rub together as well for any child who loves a little bit of a rub on things, which are really, really nice kind of little stocking fillers if you want it. All right, I'm just going to put these out of the way because I just keep piling everything up in front of me. Someone just asked just there about the the necklace, the cloth necklaces you can get on Amazon. I'd imagine you could get them on Temu as well. Amazon definitely have them. So we all love Amazon as well. Okay, so our auditory, which is our sounds, and auditory processing. Okay, so with our hypersensitive kids, loud noises can hurt, repetitive noises can hurt, any kind of building work outside. But basically what happens is you can't filter out all the sounds, all right? So I'm sitting here, and I really, really struggle with this. So I'm sitting here, and the Lewis goes by me every few minutes. I have two lovely dogs over there snoring. I can hear my fridge buzzing. And I can hear the squeaks in my chair and stuff like that. I can hear my computer buzzing. I can hear cars going by. So what happens is when you can't filter out all those sounds and you're in a very busy environment, what happens is all these sounds go up to the same level. Okay. And that's when language processing becomes really, really difficult. So I literally thought I was deaf for years. I was going to get my ears tested. I worked in a pub while I was studying. And the two lads used to call me "Heh," because anytime they'd ask me something, I'd go, "Huh?" But it's just because people speaking from behind me or anything, when all those loud sounds are up here, it becomes really, really difficult to process what people are saying. And then you can become hyposensitive. And what we often see is they might crave noise making, loads of sounds. They might have difficulty understanding verbal prompts or appear oblivious to sounds. And my best way to figure out if a child is kind of hypersensitive around sounds, you will have your children who literally will put their hands over their ears and they can't handle any loud sounds. But normally it's the loudest kids in the room that are the ones that struggle with auditory processing. Okay. The reason being is when all those sounds are up here, they have to project their voice over it a lot more. Or what we see at home is they have the telly on the loudest, they have it up full blast, or they have the iPad up to their ear full blast. And the reason that is they're trying to hear it properly, okay? Or if we have any hummers, I love like the hummers or singing songs and stuff like that. Not so much at home, but like if you see it in the school setting, I always say, when you see a classroom getting louder, these children are getting louder because they're going up over it. And some of them like to use their voice to drown out all the sounds, and they're little geniuses because they're using their voice to get rid of all the little sounds, because when all the little sounds get too much, it hurts your brain and it just gets really, really, really overwhelming. So how do we support it, which is really, really important? There's two different ways that we can support auditory processing sensitivities. One is ear defenders. Okay, so I'm sure you've all seen ear defenders. Again, Stevie is my best friend. Ear defenders are absolutely fantastic. So what ear defenders do now, these reduce the decibels of the sounds. So ear defenders reduce the decibels of the sounds, okay? This one is by 24 decibels. You can get them in all different levels. So if you might have a higher level if you're going out to, say, the zoo or something, and it's going to be really busy. Or then you might have a lower level for later on, or for kind of non-busy areas if they're still struggling with sounds. So what they do is they reduce the decibels of the sound, okay? So they could be a nice little stocking filler if they really like them. The other ones for reducing the sound are loops, okay? So these are what loops look like. They're not the actual loops, because I couldn't use them. But these are like literally a little circle for anyone who doesn't want to wear the ear defenders over the ear. These go into the ear and you can barely see them, okay? So you can have them again. I got those on Temu because I can't wear them, but you can get like actual loops, and they have all different ranges. So they have parenting ones for parents that you need to be able to hear, but then they have up to, if you're going to a concert, that they reduce the sounds so much more. So there, that kind of side of it, that's one way of giving auditory sensory breaks. The other way of doing it, because not everybody likes ear defenders and not everybody likes loops. The reason being is it makes it too quiet. Okay, so I couldn't wear loops because it makes it too quiet. I can hear myself walking, I can hear myself swallowing, I feel like a giant. It actually just freaks me out. Plus I have ADHD as well, so I've probably got about 20 voices going on in my head at once that I really don't need to listen to. So the way we do that is Bluetooth headphones with music. So I cannot go anywhere in the world without my headphones. Okay, I can't go into a shop. I can't, like, it's just too overwhelming for me. So these are mine. Now, I splurged on these when I realized how good they were for me. So like noise cancelling headphones and listening to music or listening to their video, what they do is they drown out all the other sounds, and then you get to concentrate on one sound. And that helps regulate you. So if you're going out, the likes of going out for dinner and stuff like that, if you want to bring their iPad and they can have their Bluetooth headphones on, so if they're getting really, really overwhelmed by all the sounds, like all the likes of restaurants and everything are going to be so busy. So I know anybody who's gone near Dundrum, I live beside Dundrum, and it's absolutely crazy all the time already. So just to be aware, like using Bluetooth headphones if you need to go and do some shopping or something like that could be really, really useful to help your child or yourself to be able to do that. And you can get really nice ones. You get really nice ones that are not so expensive. I think like 20 euro or something like that. And if they work, then absolutely happy days. Sorry, I'm just going to keep trying pizza out of my eye. Yeah, so it's just to be aware of that, and especially when they've been out in a busy area, like being out, and like, so if you went out for dinner or if you went and did one of the days out, the likes of the zoo or the lights or anything like that, that they might be really, really overwhelmed when they get home. So by giving them that auditory break, I always see an awful lot of battles, especially with siblings when they get home, because a lot of the time is they just want them to stop making noise. Or if you have a friend who came over for a cup of tea and they start giving out because you two are talking, see that an awful lot of the time, and they tend to take your friend by the hand and walk them to the door as if to say, get out. But a great way to do that is to give like Bluetooth headphones on your iPad or on watching the telly or whatever, to give them that auditory break and that kind of break away from all the little sounds. Then we're on to our vestibular, okay? So our vestibular is our balance, okay? So our hypersensitive kids are going to have that fear of the swings, doesn't like being off the ground, really cautious on their movement, all those things. And then on the other hand, we have our seekers who need movement, who love jumping off things. I always say, like, if you have a child who loves sitting on things, that loves being up off the ground, okay? So when I'm doing trainings or anything like that, I will always sit on top of a table because I'm a vestibular seeker. And the reason I do that is because I have to engage my balance when I'm off the ground. So if your child is a seeker, there's loads of different things that you can give them. And I'm trying to think of some nice, the likes of using the peanut ball. They can roll on top of the peanut ball and kind of roll that way. What else could you use for? You can get the balance boards. Like vestibular input could be if they love spinning. There's lovely spinning chairs that you can get if they love spinning, because that will give them loads of input. Or the swings. The swings are brilliant for vestibular input. And there's absolutely fabulous swings that you can get if you can attach them to the roof, even better. That kind of come down, they look like a teardrop, and that they can kind of climb in and they can get away, and really, really nice, and they can spin in it or can just sit on it like they're off the ground. But that gives you loads of vestibular input. Or like the egg chairs, that kind of thing, would give them that kind of input as well. Trying to think of anything else for kind of Christmas wise that's not like majorly expensive. There's loads of the balancy kind of, like the balance balls and stuff like that. The ones that they have a big circular, like it's like a half a ball, and you can kind of stand on it and balance. That's really, really good for vestibular input. anything that kind of engages that balance. And then we have our proprioceptive. So our proprioceptive sense is our awareness of our bodies in space. Okay. So a child with poor proprioception will be craving rough and tumble. They may not know their own strength. They run through things. So it's literally your awareness of like how far I am away from my desk. So sometimes they don't realize that the table's there. They might bump into it an awful lot of the time. Things can be quite distorted if you're going into the likes of different bathrooms and stuff, that it might be like proprioceptive kind of very distorted, like it's like, whoa, it might look like a big step when it's only a small little step. I often see it at the threshold of the door where they kind of nearly take a big step when the two floorings meet and they're different colors, and they might take a big step over because it's quite distorted for them and they think that they're taking a huge step, or they might find it difficult going down steps, or like off curbs and stuff like that. They might feel like they need to hold on to you. That's all your proprioception. Our seekers, which we see a lot of, a seeking proprioceptive input, it's everything that's crash bang. Absolutely everything that is crash bang. So if you have a seeker who's doing it, these are the ones who literally jump onto the bed. They don't sit on the bed, they jump onto the couch. So they're seeking all that crash bang. Or they might literally, when you're sitting on the couch, they need to lean on you because it's like seeking proprioceptive input as well. Lovely ways of giving it is a beanbag. A beanbag is fantastic, and you can literally help them, like throw them onto the beanbag and get crash bang out of that, like a beanbag, a peanut ball, and there was something else popped into my head there. Oh, beanbag and peanut ball, and it's literally gone out of my head. There was three things out, but you can get so much proprioceptive and vestibular input from just having a peanut ball. And oh yeah, because it gives you deep pressure as well. Like you can literally like throw them onto the beanbag and then roll them with the peanut ball. So any of that crash bang. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Like big exercise balls, you can get like kind of medium sized ones. If they're really seeking it, you can kind of you can throw it at them and get them to hit it away. So that's loads of proprioceptive input if they really might enjoy doing that. Or even the swing balls, that'd be really good, and they don't have to keep hitting and things like that, which would be great for their hand-eye coordination as well. So anything that is really, really crash bang is all your proprioceptive stuff. I'm trying to think of any kind of tools that we would see. That's where you're kind of get your trampolines and things like that are really, really good for proprioceptive and for vestibular as well. So they kind of marry each other very much so. So all those things when you think about your proprioceptive. And then our last sense, guys, is our interoceptive sense. Okay, so our interoceptive sense is everything that happens inside us. All right. So am I hungry? Am I full? Am I thirsty? Am I hot? Am I cold? Am I sick? Do I need to go to the toilet? Anything that our breath and it comes with our emotions as well. Okay, so a lot of our emotions is our interoceptive sense. So this is where emotional regulation, or nearly like I know for some autistic people having alexithymia. So alexithymia is when you can't match the emotions. Like sometimes you mightn't recognize the emotions that are going on, and it could be a delayed reaction to emotions. So they might mix emotions up. The feeling of being happy could be the same feeling as being anxious for them, and they can't differentiate from it. Or they mightn't be feeling sad and things like that, or even to later on. So just to be aware around that and around emotions and stuff. Oh, an awful lot of this can come down to toileting. So toileting can come an awful lot later because have they developed that need of the feeling of the need to go to the toilet? And this is one that we often see, and I see it in January. The amount of phone calls I get in January about children regressing, and I don't like the word regressing. We have to use the word because it's taking a step backwards or whatever, but it's always down to regulation. So it's more so that they're dysregulated. So I always hear toileting has regressed after Christmas, or their schoolwork has regressed, or their anything like that might have regressed after Christmas, but it's really, really not that. It's just really dysregulation. It's not that they're losing skills, it's that they're so dysregulated that they can't do them, or like dressing themselves can be quite difficult. The other one about the interoceptive sense is hunger. So some children will never feel hungry and some children will never feel full, and they're consistently eating regularly all the time, looking for food all the time. And then around sickness, so some kids will really feel sick all the time and some kids will never feel sick. I had a child who just never, you would never have known he was sick unless you literally felt him. He could be burning up and you would have never known that he was sick. He said, I don't think he even knew himself that he was sick because he was still running around. So just to be very, very aware of all those things that go on. And then when you're dysregulated, these things become more difficult for you. So I suppose when we're looking at sensory and movement breaks, okay, so sensory breaks are as important as movement breaks, like really, really important. And sensory breaks around this time of the year is really important. I know we all need movement, but for getting our movement and getting out and all those things, getting a break, a sensory break is really important. Those auditory breaks, those visual breaks and all those things, that downtime is really, really important. But just to be very, very aware of what kind of activities that we're doing. So we're going to have alerting activities and then we're going to have calming activities. Okay. So our alerting activities are all running with excitement, jumping up and down, bouncing, high impact activities, all the things that all our kids need. Okay. We need loads of it. But what can happen is I often see it, and I often see it in schools more so because I spend a lot of time in schools, is what, like, if they've been out in the yard and they're running around and all those things, and they come into the class and they're up here, they're in a high state of alert. Okay. And when they're in a high state of alert, we need to give them calming activities to come back down in order to regulate them. Okay. So we'll often see parents, and I see this often a lot of time, like, oh, do you know what? He's just so full of beans there. I'm going to send him out to the trampoline. He's going to have a great crack out on the trampoline for a good hour before bed. And that doesn't work because they just end up staying in this high state of alert because you think they're burning off this energy. But if it's really, really alerting, they're going to stay up there. So the calming activities is really, really important to understand the difference. So calm activities can be bouncing on the trampoline, but it's just in a calmer way. It's not that you're going out and going, oh, let's go, let's jump and let's flip and all these things and yay. Some kids just need to bounce on the trampoline really calmly for a minute, or just space in the garden just to run up and down away from everything, just that space away. Sensory play, any kind of sensory stuff, if they like sensory play, can be really, really calming. The likes of the putties and stuff like that. Deep pressure is the best calming activity that you can do if your child likes it. Wheelbarrows can be quite calming. So wheelbarrows, independent wheelbarrows, and crashing. So, you know, the wheelbarrows, if you're holding them, that gives you loads of proprioceptive input and it gives you loads of vestibular input and can be quite calming. But it depends on how you're doing it. And it's the same with crashing. If you're going to crash them onto the beanbag, if you're going to bring them over and go, oh yeah, let's go over to the beanbag. Yeah, let's go way, woohoo. And then they crash onto the beanbag, they're not going to come down. They're going to go up because it's a really alerting activity. So the more so you'll be going over and going, oh, let's do crash and squeeze. Okay, 1, 2, 3, crash and squeeze. And you're using that low arousal effect from yourself in order to calm them down. Or the wheelbarrows that you're doing, let's do 10 wheelbarrows and we're going to count 1, 2, 3, and keeping it really, really calm. If you're having wheelbarrow races with absolutely everybody and it's great crack and we're all having fun, absolutely fantastic, but it's not going to be a calming activity. It's just to understand the difference between the two. Okay, so I know I'm very aware of time because I know we said we'd give a good half an hour at the end. So I've only got a few more minutes anyway. And then we can do all the questions that you have, guys. Just some of the things that can affect regulation: changes in routine without preparation, The likes of the Halloween break, a huge one, usually dysregulating. It could be maybe somebody got sick at home, can be quite dysregulating. Somebody is off school, all these things. Sometimes you just wake up having a dysregulated day, just really having a shaky bottle day, and just trying to use those sensory tools in order to help them regulate. It could be that clothes are not feeling good. It could be that they're hungry. It's a huge one I see all the time. I see it quite a lot in schools, but that they're actually hungry because they might be up all night. Tiredness is going to have a huge effect on your regulation. If they're extremely tired, then they're going to be very, very dysregulated as well. It's really hard to kind of cope anything. Like for the most of us, like tiredness is absolutely, it can be quite horrendous. I suppose just why Christmas can be very, very overwhelming. It's every year. So I used to work in, I used to have a preschool for autistic children a few years ago, and I loved taking in 6 new autistic children that I didn't know in September, and having the absolute madness of figuring them out and all that stuff. But come January is probably the worst month for neurodivergent people. And the reason being is the social demands. So when they come back in November, when they come back in, or they go back into school in November after that October break, everything starts changing. Okay. As much as we try to keep the routine, but everything kind of starts changing. We're getting ready for Christmas, which is very exciting. Santa is coming. There could be days out, there could be, we're going here. So there's loads of social demands, there's a lot of change. It'll be very, very exciting. And then that's great. So then they finish for Christmas. And Christmas can go one of two ways. Some kids absolutely love Christmas, and some kids cannot cope over Christmas. I've had an awful lot of kids who have parents who've nearly cancelled Christmas because it has to look very, very different, very low demand and stuff like that. And that's where you need to give yourselves an awful lot of grace, guys, that if your Christmas doesn't look like it should traditionally, that is absolutely fine. You need to do what works for you guys. Because sometimes with Santa coming, it can be too exciting. It can be overwhelming. I've known kids who are not able to open presents, who are just literally in that stress response for the whole day through Christmas, or the likes of the pressure that you might put on yourself for food wise and things like that. If they only eat pizza, let them have pizza. That's absolutely fine. And there's like all those social demands and stuff like that. So then that Christmas happens. If it's great, absolutely fantastic. But the child is probably up here in that high stable alert because they're loving life and they're getting all their presents and this is deadly. Yeah, woohoo. And then what happens is we go back to school in January. The first day the school's open in January, my phone does not stop hopping. Because they're like, oh my God, everything is off the charts. Like there's just behaviors happening left, right, and center. There's so much going on. They might regress in toilet, they might be doing this. But they're just so dysregulated. Like I used to not dread going back into work in January, but it's quite difficult when you work in that environment and you're like, it's dark and it's miserable and everybody hates January going back after Christmas and stuff like that. So we have to understand that our kids are probably the most dysregulated at that time. So it's always back to your regulation tools. If they're really struggling, that we go back to their sensory breaks, their downtime, whatever it is that helps regulate them, is that what we go back to and we focus on, because regulation is the key to everything. And really, really working on that. And then the transition back into school can be huge as well for them. And that is me, guys, I think. Yeah, so we can do questions. I think we're going to stop the recording. Are we?
I'll stop the recording now, Ciara. Thank you very much for that.